Now, new ferries for Arran and between Skye and the Outer Hebrides are running 5 years late and so far 150% over budget. In the past 10 days since Audit Scotland published a report on the mismanaged shipbuilding contract, the controversy surrounding it has become more intense and politically dangerous for the Scottish Government, which, let's not forget, owns the ferry operator, the ferry procuring agency, and for more than 2 years, owner of the shipyard, where things have gone so badly wrong and where they continue to do so. Well, our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser, joins us now. Douglas, lots of angles to this. Which ones have developed most in the past few days?
Graham, I think three main strands we've heard about since this became noisily political in the past 10 days. One was the question of who it was, which minister overruled the Scottish Government's own agency for procurement of vessels, known as CMAL, when it said that Ferguson Shipyard in Port Glasgow should not get the contract to build these two large ferries for what was then £97 million because it was not offering the usual financial guarantees to back up the contract if things went wrong. And as we know, they did. The First Minister saying it wasn't her decision, though she does also say she's ultimately responsible. She was questioned about this week by our dogged political editor, Glenn Campbell.
Why don't you put your hands up and say the government got this spectacularly wrong and that you're sorry?
I'm obviously very regretful for the fact that the ferries have been so delayed and that there have been such cost overruns. But as the Audit Scotland report says, that is not necessarily the same as saying the contract should never have been awarded.
Well, whoever signed the contract, ministers sought to dump the blame squarely on the previous management at the shipyard, led by industrialist Jim McCall. He's been claiming this week that the timing of the contract, this is back in 2015, was rushed for party political reasons. That much is rejected by Nicola Sturgeon. And he rejects the claim that it was his people who fouled up.
There's been a fabulous propaganda exercise carried out by the government to try and put the blame of this onto the previous management at Ferguson's. Ferguson's had absolutely top-class management that did a great job, and that's why I'm speaking out to support them, because they have been unfairly criticised, clearly for political purposes, to put the blame onto them rather than the government accepting responsibility.
So another strand has been it's been about money spent on the so-called turnaround director, Tim Hare, who was hired for his experience turning around engineering businesses at times of crisis and financial distress. He was signed up by the Scottish Government in 2019 when Ferguson's was put into administration, and he was on a daily rate of nearly £3,000. At First Minister's questions this week, Tory leader Douglas Ross chose to pursue the controversy with Nicola Sturgeon, while Labour's Anna Sarwar ridiculed the notion that Tim Hare was earning the market rate for the job.
Market rate? £3,000 a day? Were you signing Lionel Messi? I mean, who is the First Minister kidding? I don't hear any apology or any regret for paying this man £2 million. That £2 million was to turn around the yard, but the ferries still aren't delivered, are costing more and are delayed again.
The Deputy First Minister, John Swinney, said in 2014 the SNP would replace 12 ferries with £250 million. They haven't even built one for that amount of money. They have ignored the experts, and islanders remain stuck with a rotten ferry service with no sign of improvements.
This has not gone the way anybody would have wanted. But Douglas Ross says there is nothing to show for it. There are, as of I think the middle of March this year, 462 people in Ferguson Shipyard that have employment. I think that is something to show for the actions of this government.
Well, these job numbers are disputed by Alf Young, veteran business journalist who's been digging away at this story, writing in the Times, with evidence that workforce numbers are well below those claimed, partly because it's been very hard to recruit people with the necessary skills.
And Douglas, you've also been looking at the current state of the shipbuilding contracts.
Yes, and this is in the light of the Audit Scotland report telling us how things have been going up to February this year, saying there have been numerous concerns still being raised. CMAL, the procuring agency, was telling the shipyard that there were 176 problems that still had to be sorted out, some of them really profound technical problems. Audit Scotland reported the design wasn't finalised even in the middle of last year. By January, CMAL was saying it still lacked detail. And the Audit Scotland report, I think, understated the two parties have fundamentally disagreed on certain aspects of the build, which has meant that communication between the two is not always productive and has not supported progress on the vessels. Now, these are two arms of the Scottish Government, unable to get on in much the same way that CMAL did not get on with the previous management. We've learned recently that 1,400 cables on the more advanced ship, the Glen Sannox, are not long enough. We don't know why. The engines and the other equipment, they're out of warranty. So come the point the ships are being commissioned, any problems there are going to fall again on the Scottish taxpayer. Audit Scotland quotes CMAL recently warning that the ships may not get safety certification unless changes are made. The shipyard management warning that the ships may not be accepted by CMAL at the point of handover. In short, there is a lot more potential for this ferry's fiasco to become far worse unless the Scottish Government gets its agencies to work together.
And looking back on what's already happened, the spending watchdog says that there must be lessons to be learned.
Yes, CMAL told Audit Scotland it's learned some lessons. One is never to let ministers ignore its advice like that again. Ministers are less clear about lessons they need to learn. But there's a thought here that has been shared with me by an insider in this process. If you look at almost every order for a CalMac ferry in the past 30 years or so, the shipyards have a habit of going bust. And in Ferguson's case, that's happened twice in the past 8 years. Why? Well, that's surely one for whatever inquiry follows this. And let's not forget, this is about islanders who need CalMac to have a newer and more reliable fleet.
I have to take my husband for a long-awaited brain scan next week. We can't get a ferry on the day of the scan, so we go before. Nearly everybody does this and pays for overnight accommodation. Now, we can't get home the day of the scan. We can't get on a ferry the next day. That's 3 days accommodation to go for a half-hour scan.
It impacts on everything, day-to-day life, from our ability to go about business, to attend family events, to go shopping, to attend medical appointments or funerals even, or, and to get things delivered. In the last sort of 10, 15 years or so, the service has just progressively become more and more unreliable.
A couple of the islanders who've been talking to BBC Radio Scotland, and thanks also to our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser.